Let's talk some Florida football. It's a good subject these days for Gators fans. They can do so with a smile on their face. We got Jackie Franchuli on the line from Gators territory. It's the Rivals platform for Florida football. Jackie, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing just fine. The internet not doing us a whole lot of favors right now, but this is okay. We get to hear your voice nice and clear. So this 2019 class, Dan Mullen seemed to get it revved up a couple months before the first signing day in December. Certainly that was the big haul, and he closed fast and he closed strong with a couple great pickups this past Wednesday.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's not just because he was able to sign 2 extra Rivals 100 players that both committed on the day with Chris Bogwell and Kara Elam. It was the fact that he beat his SEC rivals in order to do so. Chris Bogwell was an Alabama commit, and it was a Alabama commit that Nick Saban wanted to keep in that class. For Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham, since Grantham took the lead in this recruitment, to kind of flip him in the last 2-3 weeks is a great win for the program, and it shows the direction that this program is headed into. The other big one was obviously Kara Elam. He's a Florida legacy, so many, said that this was a must-win for Florida because you need to keep those legacies home, and they beat Georgia. Kirby Smart and that program really wanted Elam, especially with the departure of Charlton Warren. A lot of people thought that the momentum was swinging towards the Bulldogs. I remember us talking, and I said, hold on a second, Florida has a big chance with this, especially after we talked about that Torian Gray was going to be added to the program. And that in itself kind of won over the Elam family. It was a remarkable finish. And not to mention that they signed some guys that already were committed to the program, like Dylan Black, a very versatile defender, and R.J. Henderson, a very, very, very talented wide receiver that kind of fits the mold in what Florida wants in a wide receiver. And obviously, they also added in Jonathan Greenard, a grad transfer. So this was a very, very good win for Florida. They are finished in the top 10 on Rivals, something that many people didn't believe that Florida was going to do in Dan Mullen's first full recruiting cycle at Florida, because they came in and were behind in the 2019 class, because you really need 2-3 years to kind of be ahead of the curve when it comes to recruiting now. And to be fair, they're ahead of the curve in 2020 now, too. They've got a couple of really good commits in that class. There are top 10 on our Rivals network. I believe they're either 6th or 7th off the top of my head. And they're leading for a couple of big names, like just today at the Under Armour All-America game, All-America practice. DeMarcus Bowman, a 4-star running back out of Lakeland, the same school that Keon Zipper, Lloyd Summerall, and Davey Hammond, the trio that committed in December, he named Florida as a leader. So this is a very good time for Florida to continue building momentum, and they've tried to do that with the underclassmen as well. I think one thing that they used their opportunities during January, since they knew which kids they wanted, so they had a smaller pool to deal with the 2019 class, because they signed 23 in December. So they had a smaller batch of kids. So Dan Mullen and his coaches were also able to see underclassmen. A lot of 2020 kids, a lot of 2021 kids were able to be seen during that period. So they were one step ahead of the curve. A lot of the other programs, especially in-state with Miami and Florida State kind of struggling right now. So they were able to visit those in-state schools, and some schools are within a 5-hour radius, including the state of Georgia. And they were able to make some inroads really early, and obviously moving forward, because, they can take official visits in the spring. This is the 2nd year in a row they're able to do that because of the early signing period. So kind of moving forward into that, and always looking, getting one step ahead, always looking forward. So it's been a good month for Florida.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, on the line with Jackie Franchuli, Gators territory on the Rivals platform. And as Jackie mentions, number 8 recruiting class in 2019, according to Rivals, and another placement in the top 10 looking forward to 2020. Jackie, you hit on a number of different dynamics in regards to competition on the recruiting path that is, I'm not going to say it's completely unique to Florida, but it's interesting. And at that level, it probably is a bit unique in terms of Rivals. Georgia's the standard. They've become that over the past few years under Kirby Smart. Tennessee, despite their failings on the field, brought in a great haul under Jeremy Pruitt. Those are the two chief rivals in the division. The two mainstays you would figure over the long haul, even though Tennessee's a few steps behind. Then within the state, obviously you're fighting against everybody, even the Notre Dames and Ohio State's coming in. But that direct competition, even though you don't have to face them in conference, it's Florida State every year. Obviously, at the end of the season, it's Miami this year on the field. And then, of course, for the talent, they're right there. And Dan Mullen is winning most of those battles.
Yeah, well, Chris Boggle is one of them. Although he was an Alabama commit, Miami was the heavy favorite coming into January to flip him from Alabama. And even maybe 48 hours, 36 hours before, Miami was still the team trending. Despite Florida making some inroads after his official visits, people were still hesitant to say that Florida was the overwhelming leader, just because we were hearing that some people wanted him to stay closer to home and stay in South Florida. But Todd Grantham and Dan Mullen did enough to sway the family, and that's a great win for them, going into Miami's backyard and taking that kid away and bringing him up here to Gainesville.
So Jack, yeah, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, and that's the same goes for a lot of their wins. Was Leonard Manuel, a kid in the 2020 class, was also being recruited by Miami. That's another victory over the Hurricanes. So this is happening quite a lot lately, and it's honestly what's happening on the field for both programs. Miami is a program that looks like it's in disarray. They're kind of going into the transfer portal and making that a big thing for them, because they have scholarships to give, so they're trying to fill in those holes that way. While Florida is really tight on scholarships because they were able to sign all the kids that they really wanted.
Yeah, so Dan Mullen, ever since he stepped off the plane in Gainesville for the first time a year ago, doesn't seem to have taken a misstep. Of course, they lost games, but to finish top 10 in the nation, and really the only subpar performance was the Missouri game. He's got a much stronger and a football team that looked much stronger physically and more capable of competing at the level that they're expected, and he was able to do that right out of the gate. He developed his quarterback, Felipe Franks, not to elite level already, but the strides that he took were pretty substantial. And the recruiting that he was able to wrap up in 2018, substantial. Then he comes into 2019, and from start to finish, and he does the job. He just, there doesn't seem to be a misstep for Dan Mullen.
No, and of course, like you said, there were some games that they didn't perform up to what they were expected. Vanderbilt was one where they didn't show consistency. Like you said, Missouri was one. But I think Missouri was a turning point for this team, because I know it was a little deeper into the season than you would think maybe Georgia was a turning point. But if you look at Missouri, I think Dan Mullen kind of challenged this team a little bit in his post game. He was saying he wanted you to compete. If we're thumb wrestling, we're going to compete. If we're doing, in classroom, I want you to compete. If you're here not to compete, then why are you doing? Why are you wasting space? So I think Missouri was the kind of turning point for this team to kind of click. And as far as recruiting, I always say that if you're doing well in the field, you're going to do well in recruiting, because kids want to see some production. They want to see development. So if you see a guy like Felipe Franks, who last year had to be benched a couple of times, and he's now leading the offense. He's not consistent all the time, but you know what? He's got confidence. He was able to do things at times where it kind of took out the team from a whole. So you see a different player, and you can credit the coaches for that. You've seen this same player last year under different coaching staff, and this is what they've done in a year. So that's where the recruiting comes in. So everything's kind of tied together. Mullen's done a good job of, kind of building off of that. He was FaceTiming kids from the field at the Peach Bowl right before. So you're like, okay, this guy knows how to play the game. This guy knows how to do it. So he uses everything to his advantage. If you're at the Peach Bowl, why not FaceTime one of your top targets from the field, showing them this could be you next year. You could be here playing in the college football playoffs with us. So he's done an excellent job using the tools that he has and kind of adapting to it. I think one of the things that is very different with Mullen and the staff is they recruit a lot of versatile athletes. So when you look at their class, especially in 2019, you got guys like Black and Tyron Hopper that both played DV and also our linebackers, and you can see that they can probably move around Todd Grantham's defense once they come to Gainesville. So it's going to be interesting to see where some of these guys, some of these versatile athletes, kind of come into Florida and where they're going to kind of fit in. So I think that's something that this staff has done, and it's just energized everybody. You know, you walk around Gainesville, it's very energetic. People are counting down to spring football. Their basketball season's going on. Obviously, it's not the best basketball season right now for Florida. So everyone's counting down to spring. You know, it's going to, I believe it's around March 13th when the first spring practice is going to happen. So everyone's just counting down. You know, I post the story and just rehashing, you know, this is where the scholarships are and this is where the defensive back outlook looks, and everyone just goes haywire. So everyone's just excited. That's been different. I've been on this beat. It's going to be my 4th season, and it's never been this energetic before.
I can imagine. It's always first-rate analysis from Jackie Franchuli. Join her on the rival site for Florida football. That would be Gators territory. Jackie, we appreciate you stopping by. Always, I gain a ton of insight into what's going on with Florida football, and all thumbs up at this point in regards to what's going on for 2019, 20, and 21 going forward for Dan Mullen and company.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's going to be interesting to see which kids pop next. There's quite a few that have come close the last few weeks, so it's going to be fun.
Thanks, Jackie. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.